Welcome to CFM 10. Come follow me 10 minutes at a time. This week we learned about Lehi's Dream and metal plates. Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Oh. Okay, glad you joined me for CFM 10. As usual, this week we are covering some highlights from the Come Follow Me Book of Mormon lesson that covers chapters 8, 9, and 10. So where are we now? Lehi and his family are migrating south along the Red Sea. The brothers went back to Jerusalem a second time, this time to get Ishmael and his family. So now Lehi's sons are pairing off and getting married with the daughters of Ishmael. Other good news is that the family now has Laban's brass plates. The brass plates give them access to the Old Testament, the scriptures, and also a genealogical history of their ancestors. And even more important, or just as important, it's a written reference book of their language, so they can teach their language. In the same way that the English Bible enabled people to learn and study English, Lehi and his posterity now have the brass plates to maintain their language as well as their culture and their religion. Okay, first topic today. Let's talk about metal plates. Are you familiar with fairmormon.org? It is a group of defenders of the LDS faith. It was started in 1997, and it is staffed by volunteers who are students of the scriptures, ancient languages, early Christian history, early LDS history, etc. So if you ever come across a challenging question about the LDS faith or history, I strongly suggest that you check Fair Mormon first. They have probably already researched your question and provided a really good answer, or they would probably be happy to research any new question that you have. Anyway, one article I like from Fair Mormon is about the use of metal plates in antiquity for preserving written language. In 1 Nephi, Nephi talks about his two sets of plates. One set he refers to as his other plates, and the other plates are larger and contain the secular history of the kings, the wars, the contentions, and everything. And then Nephi also creates a set of small plates, and he keeps calling them these plates. These plates, other plates. These plates, the small plates, are the source texts which are used from 1 Nephi all the way through the book of Omni. So that's the small plates of Nephi. Anyway, a written record on metal plates was totally mocked in Joseph Smith's day. However, this Fair Mormon article reviews evidence that metal plates were actually used in Lehi's day. And there are many more articles besides. If you look at the article, it has a photo of some gold plates showing religious texts dating to around 500 BC. One plate is written in Phoenician. Recall that ancient Phoenicia is the region of about modern-day Lebanon and northern Israel, so not that far from Lehi's home in Jerusalem. Anyway, these three plates are part of the Etruscan Museum in Rome, and this is just one example of many that show that metal plates were in use at the time of the Book of Mormon authors. Okay, next topic, Reformed Egyptian language. As I mentioned, in 1 Nephi, our prophet, author Nephi, explains that he's creating two records, large plates, small plates. So what language did Nephi write with? Well, way back in 1 Nephi, chapter 1, verse 2, Nephi states that he, quote, makes a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians. Okay. The learning of the Jews, which Lehi would have had, that would have been in Hebrew. So why didn't Nephi just write his two sets of plates in Hebrew? Well, if we check out Hebrew versus English, for example, we can see that Hebrew is at least 20% more efficient than English. Check out this comparison of a very simple sentence we all know. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The Hebrew is fewer words, fewer spaces, fewer characters, and very little punctuation. And so this seems pretty efficient. Hebrew is definitely more efficient than English. But do you know what is even more efficient than Hebrew? Well, whatever the reformed Egyptian language was, we know that it uses even less space than Hebrew, and of course much less space than English. How do we know this? Well, because later in the Book of Mormon, Moroni, he says this, quote, "And if our plates had been sufficiently large, we would have written in Hebrew. And if we could have written in Hebrew, behold, ye would have had no imperfection in our record." That's from Mormon chapter 9, verse 33. Anyway, that's interesting. So they wrote in some kind of Egyptian dialect because it was even more efficient than Hebrew, even if it was a little less accurate than Hebrew. And it kind of reminded me that Moroni sounded kind of like a software engineer. His programming is limited by his memory space, so he has to write his code, in other words, make his writings as efficiently as possible, even though he may have wanted to be a little more elegant with it. Anyway, it's just interesting that they wrote in a very efficient Egyptian type language instead of Hebrew, and I think that's pretty interesting. Okay, next on our list, let's talk about Lehi's vision. In chapter 8, Lehi has a vision or a dream. You may recall that Lehi is a descendant from the tribe of Manasseh. That just means that he is a descendant from Joseph of Egypt. And of course, Joseph's dreams from 1,000 years earlier showed that Joseph would be a leader over his brothers. And of course, Joseph did become a leader in Egypt, and with the help of Pharaoh, Joseph saved the children of Israel from a famine. Anyway, like Joseph of Egypt, we see that Lehi's dream also does not go over very well with some of his family, particularly his older sons, Laman and Lemuel. Let's review the main elements of the dream from 1 Nephi chapter 8 and also 1 Nephi chapter 11, where Nephi basically has the same dream that Lehi had. As I review Lehi's dream, I will be showing you several amazing pieces of art because many different artists have made artwork interpreting the dream, how they see it, and maybe you have even tried yourself to draw this out. It's pretty challenging to fit in all the elements of the dream. Anyway, I provide the links to all the artwork I'm going to show under more info below the video. Okay, so what are the highlights from Lehi's dream? In 1 Nephi chapter 8, verse 4, Lehi states, quote, "Methought I saw in my dream a dark and dreary wilderness." Verse 5, "I saw a man, and he was dressed in a white robe." Verse 10, "I beheld a tree whose fruit was desirable to make one happy." Verse 11, "I did go forth and partake of the fruit thereof, and I beheld that it was most sweet, above all that I ever before tasted." Verse 19, "I beheld a rod of iron, and it extended along the bank of the river, and led to the tree by which I stood." Verse 20. 23, "There arose a mist of darkness, insomuch that they who had commenced in the path did lose their way." Verse 26, "On the other side of the river of water, a great and spacious building, and it stood as it were in the air, high above the earth." 27, "And it was filled with people, and their manner of dress was exceedingly fine, and they were in the attitude of mocking and pointing their fingers towards those who had come at and were partaking of the fruit." There are numerous books and articles about Lehi's dream. It's a fascinating subject. The key takeaway for me from the dream is that we are all on a trajectory or a path. The goal is get to that tree, which represents the love of God, the blessings of God. The iron rod, of course, is God's word. Follow the iron rod along the straight path, and you will make it, and it will be worth it. Don't be one of the many people in the dream who are wandering basically in all directions. Some go to the spacious building, which represents worldly pride and pursuits. Some are stuck in the fog or the mist. Some are falling in the river. The important thing is to just stay focused with a goal of getting to the tree, which is the love of God. Anyway, that's all for today. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you next time.